Hello guys, you're welcome to today's tutorial. Today's tutorial I will be discussing how to install Django on an Ubuntu system. Basically, I will be showing you methods to have your Ubuntu systems ready to start developing in Python. Without further ado, we'll have to turn on our terminal, and here is my terminal. Now, before we start any development in Django, Django is actually a Python framework. So, since it is a Python framework, we would have to check if we have Python installed in our system. We will type in Python --version on our terminal. If you get this output as stating the version of the Python you have installed in your system, then you have already done what I will be showing you today. By the default, Ubuntu system comes with Python installed, but you don't type Python plain like this as I showed you here, but instead you would have to put in a 3 after Python, which is Python 3. This is the default way Python 3 was installed on Ubuntu. I will be showing you how we can fix that, and if you check out the one that was installed on Ubuntu, you'll see that it's a later version, not the current version of Python. So, to get that fixed, we'll be running a command to get Python 3 installed. Okay? For those of you who might type Python and have an output that tells you command Python not found, did you mean Python 3? Well, that goes to tell you that Python was not installed on your system. So, this is how we can get that to work. To solve this, we'll make a symbolic link of the Python 3 binary to our default, to make it our default Python command. To do this, we would have to type in this command, update alternatives --install user directory bin Python spacebar Python -user, which is user, bin Python 3, and make it the default version, which is 1. Okay, so once you click this, oh, there was an error in what I typed, so you just hit the arrow key up to go back to what you had initially typed, and we delete the Y and replace it with a U. Now, when you get a permission denied error, that is because you need to impute sudo. A sudo is supposed to be a sudo command. So, we do this by adding sudo, enter, and put your password. And if you see, it actually works now. Now, to check if that is correct, you now have to type Python --version again. Now, if you see, it's working perfectly well. Alright? If you also type just Python, you see, it actually made the default for our system. Now, next, we would have to check if we have Pip installed. Alright? For us to install Pip on the system, Python and Ubuntu actually comes with the default Pip installed on it, and that is the Pip 3. That's the Pip 3 command. Right? Now we are going to fix that so it also functions the exact same way as we had just done for our Python. So to do that, we would have to install the pip. If you do not have pip installed on your system, actually, So to do that, we would run the command sudo apt install python dash pip dash y. The dash y is to ensure that when the command prompt is run, you wouldn't have to type yes again. It will just run for you. Okay, so as we do that, within packages, and you can see I already have my pip already installed. Sorry, there was an error. It's supposed to be Python 3 and pip. So we have pip already installed on my own system, but if you run this on your own system, you would actually have an installation of pip on your system. Now, one thing that's noteworthy for Python systems is for Django development or Python development is you have to create a separate environment. A separate environment where you will develop from. Now to do that, you would have to install a package called Pipenv. And to install that package, you would have to run pip install Pipenv. That's just it. That's all you have to do. Alright, let me clear my screen so we can actually have a clearer view. So all you have to do is just pip install pip, no spacebar, sorry, no spacebar at all, pipenv, and voila, it will run. It will install the current version of pipenv on your system, and you're good to go. So if you see, it's already telling me that I already have requirements satisfied, which is the pipenv already installed on my system. Okay, now if you check out what it installed setup tools, virtual env, certify, virtual env clone, all this. So this tells us we already have a pipenv version installed on our system. Now for me to develop on Python, I generally create a separate folder on my Ubuntu where I do all web development projects on, and I call that folder www. So for you, those of you who is having a fresh install, for you to do that, you just have to do mk, that which is make dir, no spacebar, which is make directory, and you call it www. Once you hit enter, you would have that done and created for you on your home directory. Now when I talk about home directory, I mean this directory here, home. So if you click on it, you would have your www installed. This is mine, and in it there are tons and tons of other projects in it. Alright, so that's where we are creating our own www on. So let's go back there. So if you create this, you would have that done. Now all I have to do is cd change directory into www, and good, I'm in it. If I do ls, you see all the list of projects that I have done already for other people, other clients and companies I work with. It's very similar to what you find here. Okay, very similar. All the dotted directories are hidden. All dotted directories are hidden, so you won't find them here on your terminal. Okay, so with that done, the next thing we're supposed to do is to install our Django. Now let's say we're doing it, you're creating a blog, which I'll be doing on a later video that is very responsive. Okay, so we'll create a directory. As I said before, we use make directory, and I'll call it YouTube blog. Bam, and I'm done. Then to change into that directory, all I have to do is cd yt blog, and I'm in. Now if you remember, we already installed a package called Pipenv. So all we need to do to activate our environment, our own virtual environment, is just to call in pipenv shell. That will set up a virtual environment for this project YT blog. Now watch what happens. It's creating a virtual environment for this project, pip, and it's done. And if you check here, you see our virtual environment has been created and activated at once. Now to get out of pipenv, all you need to do is just type exit, and you're out of that virtual environment. To get back to your virtual environment, you just do pip env shell, and you're back into that exact virtual environment. Now there's something I need to let you know too also. While developing, let's say you already had another directory. Let me just create one. Make directory called frontend. We'll still do this in a later video. Make directory called backend. So if you had this, and let's say your virtual environment was not activated, and then you enter, which is change directory into backend to start development, and you hit enter and you do pip env shell, this most often will create a new virtual environment for you. But if you see on this case, it has actually taken us back to the default virtual environment, which was already installed on YT, not inside backend. Now let me show you what that means. Let me just show you what that means. In our YT blog, we have a package. There's a file called pip file. This is what enables your Python environment for you. So even if you go into a directory, let's say you go into the backend directory, then you click on pipenv shell, this automatically activates the default pip file that was already installed on your system. Okay? Now that's a wrong setup. That is a wrong setup. For me, if I was to do a front end and a back end, if I was to use both Python for back end and let's say a framework like React or Vue or even Flutter for the front end, then all I would have to do is I would remove the file called this pip file. Alright, exit out of the virtual environment and remove. So I have that already uninstalled, and then if I do this, I'm now going to cd backend. So it's on the backend, this particular backend folder, that you have to do the pip env shell. So while you're running your backend, with pipenv installed. Alright, so you hit it and it's creating its own default. So now you now have a backend virtual environment activated for your project. Now it's on this backend that you will install all necessary Python and Django packages. So let's start. For me, I like to start my Django project with a package called COOKIECUTTER. And to have COOKIECUTTER installed in your system, all you have to do is pip install COOKIECUTTER. But here's the thing, I don't install COOKIECUTTER on a virtual environment. Okay, all I do is I deactivate my virtual environment and then install pip install COOKIECUTTER CookieCutter. I already have it installed on my system, so that's basically why it's like this. Okay, but if it was you who ran this from scratch, you would have it installed on your system. So I have CookieCutter installed on my system. Now I will now reactivate my virtual environment. Okay, now with CookieCutter installed, I'll show you a method for you to actually prototype the same way you prototype a React project to start up. So you go to their official site by just googling CookieCutter Django, and this is it here, CookieCutter Django.redux.io, and this is the latest version of it. Okay, so for you to start up your project, you have to go to getting up and running locally. Once getting up and running locally, there are a few things you would have to install. If you check here, make sure you have the following on your host: a Python 3 installed, a Postgres Sql, Redis if we are going to use Celery, and then CookieCutter. Now we have Python 3 already installed on our system. We have CookieCutter already installed on our system. Now if we want to have Postgres Sql installed on our system, I will show you that right away. You go to the official Postgres site just by googling Postgres, and it's actually on postgresql.org. okay, allow it to load, and then for our OS, we are running on Linux, which is an Ubuntu system. So we click on Linux, and then select our own version, which is Ubuntu. Let me show you what happens. If you click on Window, it takes you to this where you have to download an installer, but we are not using Windows. Okay, so we are using Linux. So for our system, it is Ubuntu. If you are using a Debian system, this is what you will install. This is what you click rather. And then for other Linux like Kali Linux and the rest, you go for this, right? But we are using Ubuntu, so we click on Ubuntu. And now it's open, alright? And on that page, it tells us what we need to do to have our own Postgres Sql installed on our system. Okay? Now, if you check what it says, to use the app repository, follow these steps. Create the file repository configuration, and this is the file repository configuration you need to install, you need to use. Once you copy that, you go to your terminal, Ctrl-Shift-V. I don't know if you get that. Let me clear it. Ctrl-Shift and V. That's to paste. To copy, Ctrl-Shift and C. So with that done, since it's a sudo command, you have to input your password. Okay, and that's just it. You go back to your browser and pick the next one, which says import the repository sign-in key, and you need to have wget installed on your system. You can Google that to have that installed, but generally Ubuntu comes default with that already installed for you, so you don't need to worry. Ctrl-Shift-V again to add that to your repository key, and it's okay. You see, it uploads you. Okay, so we're good. And then for the final piece of the puzzle, we update our system before installing a specific version of Postgres. So Ctrl-Shift-V, sudo apt to update it. So my system is currently updating. Mind you, you would have to have your internet or Wi-Fi connected to your system to actually have this run for you successfully. Okay? Well, we'll just wait for it to be done. I'll just fast forward to have it done completely. Okay, it's done. It's done. So the next thing on our list would then be to install the latest version of Postgres Sql. If you want a specific version, we use Postgres-12, and the latest version currently is I think it's 14. Yeah, the latest version is 14.1. Okay, and it was released 11th of November 2021. So that's the current version, Postgres 14.1. So once you just run this command, it will install the latest version of Postgres for you on your system. So let's have it done. So I already have that installed on my system, so we can move further. Perhaps you, let's say you had an intention to install an older version, something of let's say 12 or 13. This is all you just need to do. Attach -1 and 3. This tells you the package that you want to install a later version of Postgres, which is the version 13. But we do not want that. We just want to stick to the latest versions of everything. Alright? Good. Next on our list would be to start up our Python environment. To start up to install Django on our Python environment. And to do that, we would run the command pip install, or rather, I said we are going to prototype it using Django COOKIECUTTER. So to do that, we would go back to our getting started with cookie. Now we have our Postgres installed, our Redis. I'll show you how to install Redis currently right now on your system. Okay? So to install Redis on your system, you just go click on that link. All these links, I'll post them on the description below, so you can actually get access to these links yourself. Okay? So for Redis, you have options to install. You could install with Docker Hub. That's it for those of you who are running with Docker. I'll still do a later video for this in the future. Then for those of you who are running an unstable version of it, this is what you use. But this is a stable version, which is 6.2. So this is what we would install on our system, the stable version of Redis. Okay? So to download and install Redis and compile, we do this. We look for the Debian repository, which is this. Okay, this was from the source itself, the main source, and I would say we do that. Okay, I would say we do that. We could also install from the Ubuntu PPA, which would be a better option, or from even Snap itself. So we'll go with the Ubuntu PPA, and then add the Redis to our package manager. So you read that Redis is an open source BSD licensed, yada yada yada, used as a database, cached and message broker. It supports data structures such as strings, hashes, lists, sets, sorts, and the rest. It has a built-in replication, Lua scripting, LRA eviction, transactions, and different levels of on-disk persistence, and provides high availability with Redis Sentinel and automatic partitioning with Redis cluster. So we hit enter. It told us here, press enter to continue, or click C or Control C to cancel adding this to your PPA. So we want it to be added, and then we click enter. It's adding it to our PPA. So we'll wait for it to get done. And the reason why it's better to have this installed on your PPA, it's when you're running sudo apt update, it actually updates your Redis alongside your system packages. Alright, like when you do this sudo apt update, it runs that PPA for Redis. Look at it here, it runs that PPA for Redis for you as well. So it helps you update your Redis system to the latest version. Okay, now the next thing you would have to install to run would be that update I just did, which is this. It was also stated that we do that update, but theirs was an apt get. Okay, so the next would be to install Redis from the Python from Ubuntu itself, Ubuntu's PPA. So sudo apt get install Redis. Remember, Ctrl+Shift+V to paste and hit enter, and wow, it's asking us to install. Now if you remember, I told you about adding a -y at the end. That was because we wanted to prevent this "do you want to continue" when installing on the terminal. Okay, well, we didn't do that now, so I'll use that as an opportunity to show you. It is installing. I already have Redis on my system, mind you. So it is done. Now if you do not like Redis, you could still use RabbitMQ. Okay, RabbitMQ. You could use RabbitMQ, alright, which is sudo So I already have my RabbitMQ installed. That's if you're going to use RabbitMQ, okay, as your broker instead of Redis. But we already have Redis installed, and it's Redis we would use. So let me clear my screen. Then now, since we have all these requirements installed, we have our Python 3, we have our Postgres for our database, we have our Redis installed, we have COOKIECUTTER installed. The next thing to do, which they asked us to do, was to create a virtual environment, and we have Pipenv to make it easy for us. We don't have to run this long command which we may forget, so we just run our Pipenv shell, and we have that installed. Activate the virtual environment you have just created, and then install COOKIECUTTER Django. So we already have COOKIECUTTER installed. Now for us to install COOKIECUTTER Django, all we need to do is just copy this. Alright, copy this, and on our terminal, Ctrl+Shift+V, paste. If you read what it says you've downloaded COOKIECUTTER before. That's for me, because I already have installed, I've already downloaded the previous version of COOKIECUTTER Django. Alright, and that's like a version 3 point something, 3.7 or so for Django. So all you need to do is just type yes. Let it reinstall, let it re-download everything again from scratch. So the process doesn't take long. Yeah, it's done already. So you give it a project name. Alright, you give it a project name. So what I'm calling this right now would be YouTube blog BE backend. Alright, you can call it whatever name you want. Whatever name you want, you can call it that. It's just the backend. Now the project log, you just hit enter again, because it's going to use the default name you've given the project. Then the description, you could do this is backend for blog, hit enter. Author name, you put your own name. Alright. Domain name, what domain are you going to host this on? So let's say we are using a ytblog.com. that will be the domain name. Alright, but we're not doing that, so we just use the default for now. If you have already purchased the domain, this is where you put it, you configure it. Alright, and you hit enter. Then the default email, normally I like to do no reply at the domain name that we have actually added in the previous prompt. Hit enter, and that's it. Now the current version, this is a version 1, since it's the first one of its kind. We hit enter. What open source license are you giving this? I usually go for a BSD. Then for the time zone, you put whatever time zone you're using. For America, let's say New York, or yeah, America. New York. This is what you do. But for me, I'm in Africa, so I'm using the Africa Lagos. Alright. Are you using Windows? No, we're not using Windows. We are on Ubuntu. Are you using Python? No, we are going to use VS Code. Are you using Docker? No, we're not using Docker. So select the Postgres version. Like, we've already installed Postgres, so it's the latest version, so we go for 1. Then select a JS task runner. Are you going to use gulp? No, so I'll just keep 1. Select cloud provider. So for those of you who might want to use AWS S3 storage or Google Cloud storage, you can click 1 for AWS S3 or 2 for Google Cloud storage. So for me, I like mine to be bare. Alright, so 3. Hit enter. Now select your mail service provider. We have the Amazon SES, we have a Mailgun. Most people would prefer to use SendGrid. I'll show you a method I like to do. I prefer using SendGrid, so that's a 6. Then use async. Django as of version 3 added an async functionality to run alongside your WXGI. So we have an ASGI and a WXGI, but we wouldn't need that because we're going to run everything from React frontend. Okay, so we just leave that as no. Since we said we are going to create an API, you need to enable this, the use Django REST framework. This is it, use Django REST framework. This is the DRF. So all you need to do is just type Y, which is yes. So it has that, it adds that to your project. Custom bootstrap compilation. That's if you want your bootstrap compiled alongside it. So we just have a bare installation, and then we'd have to integrate our bootstrap ourselves if we want to. But we're not using the bootstrap for this project because we'll be creating our own front end with React. Right? So we hit enter. We use compressor. The compressor is to minimize the JavaScript and CSS files for you. So we're not using that. Use Celery. Well, I like to use Celery, so we just have it installed. Mailhog, no. Use Sentry. That's if you want log reporting from Sentry, Sentry.io. I'll leave that as no. Use white noise. Yes, since we're not using the Google Cloud storage or S3 storages, it will be best for us to use white noise. Alright, this is default. So we click on Y. Use Heroku. For those of you who would want to run this on a Heroku pass system or a VPS using Doku, it's very similar to Heroku. So you could enable this. I love to keep it as enabled because majorly I deploy my production ready projects to Doku. I'll still show you how to configure Doku for Python, React, Vue, and all the rest development. Okay, so click it yes. Then for this CI tool, you choose whichever one you're familiar with. Alright, for me I prefer GitHub. Then keep local environments in version control system. You could click yes, you could click no, it depends on your choice, but let's just leave it as default. Debug no, and it's done. You have your project set up. So if you check into it, you see you have this. This is the project name you just created. If you go into it, cd, if you go into it and ls, you should see everything installed. Now, to get this open on VS Code, all you have to do is code full stop, enter. It will open your VS Code for you. I'll show you. This is a new thing VS Code started to trust the author. So you click yes. So now this is our, let me make my screen bigger so you can actually see everything. So on this we have the env files. This is where the configuration for certain things is, but we will not be using this. We will not be using this. Rather, we will be creating our own. This here, this icon here, is to create a file. So we create our own .env file. Alright? So this is our own .env file. Now we can go into the local file and pick some things that we would naturally need. So we'll go with this. We'll go with this. We are not using Docker, so you should change this to no. This is the Redis, default Redis local URL, and then for celery to work, you do celery broker URL. So you just attach this. No space, please, no space bar. And then copy and paste this into it. Alright, so now your celery broker URL will be running on your Redis. Your celery broker URL will be working with your Redis. Alright, then the next thing would have to be, well, for now I wouldn't say we set up the Postgres. I'll do that on a later video just to make things short. So with this, we have our celery already installed, and for production you would have to include most of this. Alright, you have to include most of this on your system. You have to include most of this on your .env file. We already have this, we already have these. So what's left is having this for our all auths, which is our registration. I'll still explain this all auths on a later day, but for now we just want to get your Django up and running first. Right? So all we have to do is go to well, this is everything that you need for now. We would have to open our terminal here, our inbuilt terminal for this project, and like I said, activate your environment. Do not forget that Pipenv shell. Activate your environment. So you just wait for it. Bam, it's okay. It's already activated elsewhere. Yeah, it's already activated elsewhere, which is here. Okay, it's already activated here. So to fix that, we'll have to close this, and then we would also need to create a database, a Postgres database, because this cookie cutter works with Postgres. If you check its configuration, we already had Postgres enabled. So on the system, let me exit this so we can actually do the right thing. So cdyt blog. So if you do code full stop, it will open that for you. Okay, so this time we can actually enable, so for you to have that functional. Boom, we have it, it's done. Alright, so you just open a different terminal and then have it run from there. So this is it, it's done. Alright, so there's no big issue about it. But one thing you should notice is that actually gone back a directory, so it's no longer in our YT blog BE directory, so we have to change back to it. So the shortcut to actually get it, if you have already an existing directory in that folder, all you need to do is just initially start typing and then hit the tab key. It will also complete it for you. Okay, and then enter. That's it. So since this is done, you then have to do Python or something like this, py run server. Now it's telling you no module named Django installed. That's because your requirements.file, this is how it does it for you. It makes it simply. These are your base requirements, your base packages that are required, and inside that base package you would have a Django. It's a version 3.2. You have your Django environment, which enables you to do this, okay, to run your virtual environment, your environment variables from the .env file. So that's just it. Then we have Django Allot, which helps you create your authentication. It just prototypes it for you, makes it easy. And if you check here, you see users. No. When you check here, you should see an account. So on this account, these are the prototypes. These are configured pages that this Django Allot helps you create. So they are just defaults on their own. For your authentication, login, logout, sign up pages, password reset, password change, sign up close, inactive accounts, and so on. Okay, email confirmation as well, all from here. All those work from Django Allot. Okay, so without further ado, we have to install our requirements. So to do that, we are going to install the local one like this. And if you check inside the local one, it also takes that from this. It takes them. It also installs the requirements from the base.txt, which is this line here. So while you're clicking to install, while you're running the command to install local.txt, it's also going to install local.txt and then install base.txt as well alongside it. Alright, so that's all we just need to do. So we do pip install -r requirements, and I told you a shortcut to autocomplete. So once you've already done req, hit your tab key. That then creates it just auto completes this folder for you. Then hit your forward arrow key and forward slash, and then we are going to install the local one, so we just do local, hit the tab key again, and you have your local text. So all you just need to do is just hit enter. And it will install all the necessary packages that we need for this particular project on our own environment, virtual environment. Okay, so if you need to install a new package on your system, you just come down here and add a new one. Alright, just add a new pip file or pip package here, run your installation again, and you're good to go. So we're done. Now if you run the command we ran initially, the run server, it will output an error telling us we have improperly configured celery broker URL. Now this is because currently our project is not feeding off from this .env file. So to fix that, all you need to do is go into your config file. You go to your config file, your settings, go to your base settings, then here Django read.env file. This is saying we want our project to read this .env file. So as a default, it's set to false. All you need to do is just change that to true and save. Okay, so now it automatically reads from our env file. So if we run the command again, we should get a different error, hopefully. Okay, so it's basically not giving us an error. Yeah, it gave us an error. Good. Now this error is telling us that the database for Postgres, this is not installed. If you check your config file, this is it. Alright, this is just it. So this has not been installed on our Postgres. It does not exist. So for us to do that, we have to install the PGAdmin on our system. I'll drop every link I'll drop everything on the description so you can actually install your own PGAdmin. Okay, so this is the PGAdmin. It gives a friendly user interface to create your database without having to go back to command line to run the whole Postgres script. Okay, so that's just it. That's the reason why we're having this installed. So I'll drop every information on the description. So mine is open. My system's a little bit slow. There are a lot of processes running. So that's my database. So all you have to do is just attach it here and check the name. It's requesting for us to have this particular database name installed. Control Shift C, and I initially told you. And we have that installed, so we can now go back to our project and run server. Good, and we're good to go. So this is running locally. So if you go to this address here, or you go to localhost port 8000 and hit enter, our project is up and running. Okay, now if you see this, it actually installed the COOKIECUTTER helps us install what do you call it, a debug tool that helps us debug our project, tells us the version of Python we're using, the CPU time taken to actually process this web page, the settings, every other necessary information we will need. Alright, so that's just it. So this is our project setup. It's currently working. I don't know if you found this easy. Now with the all auth helps us have this sign up page. Okay, this is not existing because we've not run our migration commands, so we'll just immediately run those. Alright, immediately run those. Control C to stop our server from running, and then we run migrate. That's just it. We run our migrate command. It migrates everything for us. Hit the up key again to go back to run server, so we don't have to retype it. And our server is running. So now if we go to sign up, we shouldn't have that error, you see? So now we can input our email address, our passwords, all those necessary things we need to do. Once we get that done, it installs for us, sends a message, an email to us, and we can actually verify ourselves. So that's it for setting up a Django on Ubuntu system, installing Postgres, Redis, getting COOKIECUTTER set up to prototype our Django project, our folder structure. Okay, for our folder structure, as I said initially, this is what it will look like. This is what our folder structure would look like once we are done. YouTube blog. So this is it. We have our backend. Let me increase it so you can actually see. We have our backend folder and we have our front end. The front end is where the React project will be run. It will be set up from here. But now we have our Python project set up here. This is our pip file to enable our virtual environment. And this is our entire project. This is where the configuration files for settings, URLs, WSGI, Celery will be. So this is the Celery. This is the API router for the Django REST framework. This is the URLs. This is our WSGI. This is the settings. The setting is divided into 4. We have the base settings, we have the local settings, we have the production settings. So when we are developing the blog, I'll be showing you how we'll be using each and every one of this. In fact, basically we'll be using 1 and 2. Here we'll be using 1 and 2. This is for the production. Once you're ready to publish your project online, we'll use this. While this will be for general setups and then general settings, installing a WYSIWYG editor, installing your backend securities and the rest. Any other necessary package you install, you have to go through the base.py file. Then the URL configurations goes here, and that's just it. So on our next video, I'll be showing you each and every one of these folder directories, what they are, and how we can actually use each and every one of them. Alright, so stay tuned.